Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm brilliant. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's fun acting like we haven't been speaking for 5 minutes.
I know.
Before this. Welcome to whatever this is. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you coming on. So, the aim with this is kind of more of an educational kind of thing. Obviously, we're mid lockdown, mid COVID-19. So there's lots of people stuck in their houses right now at this current time, trying to find new skills, trying to learn, like sharpen the skills that they do have. And obviously, what would you say your main talent is? Because I would say it would be video, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the hard thing. You've already started with a deep question: is when do you call yourself what? But I think I'd say
You're a creative.
Yeah, I'm a content creator. I think I'd say I'm a multimedia content creator. So that works with film and photography.
I like to think that I understand video quite a bit. So let's go with video.
Okay.
A good place to start is at the start. So how kind of introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do? How did you get into it?
So I am Alex Woosey. I run a content creation company called Alexander Nomo Creative Co. Instagram based or online based. And that is what I currently do, pretty much. I am going to slide in there that I am still a student, but I won't be for much longer, and give it a year or so. And the company that I've created and started is currently a side hustle, which is going to be shifted into top gear when I graduate, pretty much.
So where does filmmaking, short filmmaking, come into that?
So where does it come into that? I think where I started with it, going right from back to the start, I've always been interested in photography. It runs in my family. My sister went to uni to be a photographer, and my dad's an ex-press photographer. And I've always been around cameras every time, always we've been around cameras. I used to model for my sister when I was much younger, and I've actually got some recent photographs I found of that, so I can send you those if you want. When I used to do modelling when I was about 14, and even younger than that. It's wonderful, me against a tree like this.
That sounds like a really good thumbnail.
Yeah. And I've always just sort of loved it. I got my first camera, I got a 600D Canon when I was about 14, 15, maybe 16. So I was quite young.
That's a good camera to start with.
Yeah, my nan bought it for me. I nagged my mum for ages. I found it online, and I knew a mate of mine who was a bit older than me who was just doing YouTube stuff. So I messaged him and I said, "What's good for filmmaking?" I didn't really know at the time. And he was like, "Oh, I've got the 600D, so this is what I use. So I think it's quite good. I'll recommend it to you." So he recommended it to me, and I bought it. And I started from there, and I just sort of learned as I went along, and I just created. I think that's the best piece of advice I can give to anybody who's starting or is interested, or just at any point in the process, is never stop creating, I think. Because you can always, as you just said at the start, you hone your skills and sharpen your skills all the time, especially as we're in lockdown. Everybody is sort of currently doing that as creatives. And I think creating is the key. I got that camera and I never stopped, and I still haven't stopped, pretty much. About 10... No, I'm not 24. So about 9 years down the line, I'm still going with it. But yeah, I started there, and I started getting into short films and making sort of YouTube things. I was interested in a bit of gaming, so I used to do sort of side cam gaming stuff, and I bought myself a green screen, started doing keying and a bit of VFX and editing and stuff. And originally I wanted to be an editor, really. I started editing and playing about with Premiere and stuff like that. Well, even before Premiere, it was Camtasia and Sony Vegas I used to use. Before I bought Premiere, and then sort of moved up the ranks and learned how all the editing software worked, and then started getting into keying, and then my keying wasn't working properly, so I bought myself a lighting kit and started lighting, and then I got more into the camera technical side through sort of the lighting, and then how lights affect cameras, and then I moved into natural light, and then I went outside and started photography, and then the two things sort of amalgamated into one, doing photography and filmmaking, to the point where I was making short films in my garden, doing VFX stuff. I remember the first thing I did was, on that sort of level, was faking up with VFX, me firing a bow, just from having a piece of wood that I swung out my back like this, and then pulled an invisible string, and then I VFX'd everything in with an arrow that flew, and then the next shot was me falling on the ground with the arrow hitting me and tracking it as it comes down.
Nice.
And that was sort of VFX with camera work. That was all in my front garden. I did that. And then I started sort of making short films with my mates, really. When I went to college, I met two of my best mates, Carlos and Sam. Carlos wanted to be an actor and was very good at drama, and still is very good at drama. And Sam is a filmmaker currently. And we started writing scripts together, and we started shooting together, and we started researching stuff online on No Film School, on YouTube, and sharing all this information and things. And this was when the age of the internet was coming in a lot more. So we had things like a Facebook group chat and things, and we'd message each other every day and, you know, share links and stuff and talk about it at school. To the point where first year at college we actually made our first short film together. And we made 3 or 4 of those. We wrote scripts and shared them with each other and developed stuff. And then when we got able to go to the pub and drink, we go to the pub and write scripts together, and go for coffees and write scripts together. And then we go out and shoot these scripts that we've made. And then college sort of was over, and we realised we spent the last 3 years of our lives making films. Realised we were practically filmmakers by this point because we made stuff and developed stuff. And we're like, well, let's go to uni to make films. So that's where we are, really.
Nice.
I went to another uni, and Sam went to Norwich University Arts, and then I ended up at Norwich University Arts a year later.
There you go. You touched on something there, which is quite key, I think, for anyone that's creative, is just to keep creating. So for someone who's watching and is thinking, I've done all the creating, I've made loads of stuff, but what, in terms of filmmaking, what do you think it is that, you know, makes a film great? Like, rather than just, you know, is it just looking nice? Is it just a nice soundtrack? What is it that really takes it to the next level?
I think on a cinematographer's point of view, I mean, I'm training to be a cinematographer, so on a cinematographer's point of view, it's all the aspects of filmmaking on a broad sense come together to make a slick film. But the key element of that, the very key element, is story.
Yeah.
Without a story, no film is going to work. Without a story, it doesn't matter how aesthetic your film is, doesn't matter how pretty the cinematography looks, doesn't matter how great the sound quality is. Without a story or a key base for audience to follow, there is no substantial foundation to a film of any sort.
Yes. Aesthetics.
Yes.
If I think about how much my aesthetic has changed, it's a lot. To start with, it was just like, staying film specific, my colour grading was non-existent for a long time, like years. How long have I been doing? Close to 7 years now. I started when I was 16, full time, and have been doing so until now, and I'm 22. So how has your aesthetic, I guess, changed? How do you, as well, is it important to narrow down and say, like, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to get from me, or is it better to just stay broad? Or
What do you think?
Because there's 2 different ways to look at this. There's a way to look at it of a freelancing basis, for example. So I class myself as a freelancing cinematographer pretty much. So, and with my own business, a client will come to me, shifting away from short films into more corporate now, but it's still the same sort of premise. A client will come to me and say, right, I need this made. And I can go, right, well, I can make this, and here's my style. And I'll give them a package, pretty much. So they can clearly see immediately what my style is and how it will fit their business and fit their audience best. To ultimately give them more sales and make them more money and generate them more income, because that's what they're looking for. I have my own particular style, predominantly more in photography, and I'm still developing my filmmaking sort of grade, but it links hand in hand, really. I'm known now online and through my community of creators for my aesthetic, pretty much, and that's something I'm really quite proud of, that my work stands out as different because of the aesthetics. For when you're making short films or dramas or something that's scripted and that you're working in a team of people or in a collaboration with people rather than just on your own as a freelancer, when you're working in a collaboration, the aesthetic, I think you've got to be very careful with, because you can, if you go in like a bull and turns up and say, well, this is what I'm strongest at, and this is what I'm going to produce, then the directors and writers and everybody else, heads of department, are going to go, well, that doesn't fit the story. What's your motivation for that? That might not be what we want, so hold your horses for a minute. If you go in and say, I've got a strong understanding of aesthetic, here's the work I've produced in the past, here's what we can amalgamate to make the aesthetic for the film, a unique aesthetic for the film, but as a cinematographer, it's still got my stamp on it. I think that's a really good place to go with that, if you're strong in aesthetics. I mean, if you work your way up, and you get to be, for example, Wes Anderson's DP, for example. Wes Anderson has a unique style of making his films, as everybody knows. I can't actually remember Wes Anderson's DP. It's on the wall behind me somewhere. But his DP is obviously told by, I mean, I've not had any involvement. This is just what I know from, reading and seeing stuff online. But his DP has got his own style, but it still matches Wes Anderson's stuff, which is why Wes Anderson has hired him as a DP and uses him consistently to make his films exist in the same world. And that is one thing you can do with aesthetics, is make films exist in the same world by using the same tone, the same aesthetics. So, for example, shifting this into slightly photography, my entire portfolio of photography exists in the same world because of the aesthetic that it lives in, or the aesthetic that's built around it. If I suddenly change that aesthetic majorly, then there's no cohesion between my work, and my work suddenly becomes a completely different world, which has got completely different connotations to what I've built that aesthetic to look like, and to emote those sort of feelings, which now we're touching on stuff we did in the documentary last year.
Yeah, I'll link that somewhere. I would say I'm probably more of my style lends more to documentary filmmaking. I've just kind of always worked very run and gun, and I think what fulfills me most as a filmmaker is telling really emotive stories, and I think documentary does that in a way that I think it's either harder to do or you're not able to do in scripted film.
I totally agree and totally see that difference as well, because that's totally what I feel.
Yeah, so when it comes to aesthetics for me, I find it quite hard, because as much as I can plan before the shoot, if it's most of the stuff I do is interview based, if the shoot goes totally in a direction that I didn't plan for it to go, I can't really still have the aesthetic that I had in my head forced onto that. So how like in terms of filmmaking, how do you balance that? Yeah.
Okay, so with sort of narrative stuff, this is the really fun, interesting, nitty-gritty bits about filmmaking, and it's the difference between documentary work and narrative script-based work. I mean, documentaries obviously has got some form of script to an extent, but we're talking predominantly aesthetics. So when you're making a narrative short film that's scripted, it's so planned to a T. Every camera move, every line of dialogue, everything is planned out to a T months before the shoot, right? And the DP has gone into the set, the location, and they've set up, and they've got everything so that on the day they can just do the same thing over and over again, to the point when they get it. They do rehearsals, they do block throughs, they do camera tests, they do camera rehearsals, they do lighting rehearsals. In a documentary, as a documentary filmmaker, it's completely different. It's very run and gun, it's very spontaneous, it's very on the nose, let's get in here, shoot as much as we can in as little time as possible, and get out again. And I think it depends who you work, because I don't like to plan a lot. I like to plan enough so that I'm confident in what I'm doing, but then it leaves room for interpretation, or leaves room for spontaneity in there, because it creates a more interesting sort of content, I guess. And when you're working with aesthetics with that, I think when you're a documentary maker and you want to have your own stamp on something, or you want to have your own aesthetic in something, I think it's down to practice, really. You can, making a documentary can be as simple as going out with a camera and filming your high street. Not in COVID lockdown, but...
Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend that right now.
No, exactly, but just in general. It can be as simple as going out and filming your day-to-day routine, for example. That could be a documentary. And there's different ways. So you might say, hey, that sounds really boring, but there's different ways to make that interesting. And different techniques to tell the story. And one of those techniques is predominantly aesthetics. And I think if you practice doing stuff like that, and you practice, going out and making stuff, you will, by accident, form an aesthetic which you like because you have full creative control of camera and no director breathing over your shoulder going, well, I don't like that shot, let's do something different. Be bold in your choices and make different, things happen and try different ways out. And you'll find your aesthetic naturally for what you like and what you don't like, and through your tastes. Shot angles, when you're in the edit suite, what colour grade you want, what colours you're working with, what kind of light you're working with. I predominantly work with natural light, so what kind of sunlight I'm looking for, what kind of shadows, what kind of contrast and dynamic range I'm looking for. So I think once you've been able to develop that by accident, when you go out in the field and you're doing a professional grade documentary that's run and gun, your aesthetic will start to creep in on that. When you've got a strong sense of what you're looking for, you'll just go, because you practiced it so much outside. Effectively, there is quite a large crossover because you're just not practicing it in a crew like a drama production. You're practicing it on your own, doing your own thing. I think your aesthetic will creep in. And I mean, for example, looking at your work, the cohesion is clear. You can go to Iceland and shoot a documentary about you going to Iceland, and you can go into the Norfolk Broads and shoot a documentary about you going camping. And they got the same aesthetic with the same colour grade, and it's similar because you're practiced and you know what you're looking for and you know what you want. Whereas somebody who isn't quite practiced, or somebody who's sort of picking up a camera for the first time, will probably shoot in a different way every time because they're not really sure what they're looking for and they don't understand those technicalities or the theory base behind it.
Do you think it's important to kind of know what your aesthetic is before you take on a project or anything like that?
I'd say it's not. And of course, as we discussed before, it's obviously not the most important thing of filmmaking. The most important thing of filmmaking is story. But I think it depends. If you're talking about client work, depending on taking on a client, I think you've got to be very transparent with that client. If you want to work and want to develop as a filmmaker, you should tell. I reckon you should depends on the client. But if you're not confident in yourself, you should say to them, look, I'm working something out. I'm practicing something. I've done this with a client actually recently. I mean, I've been making films for about 9-10 years now, and I've got a strong aesthetic, but I wanted to go bold and try something else. I was bored of the aesthetic I created. I wanted to try something new because it wasn't working for me and I didn't like it. So I went to a client. Well, I got a client job by accident pretty much. I went into a coffee shop and was like, I took some photographs on my phone and ran them through VSCO. Put them up on my Instagram story and tagged them in it. And they messaged me and said, we love these, can we feature you? I said, yeah, by all means, go ahead, fantastic. And I said, well, these aren't my best work because they're just taken on my phone. And I thought, well, I in the back of my mind, I had the idea for creating a new aesthetic and wanted to try something new. So I said, well, can I come back and shoot something proper for you? And they said, yeah, by all means, come in. So a couple of weeks later, we'd set a date and I came in and I made them a professional grade promotional video in the new aesthetic. And when we had the briefing before the shoot, I was open with them and said, look, I want to try something new out here for my portfolio. It's very experimental. I'm not quite sure how it's going to turn out, and I can't show you any pieces that I've made before because it's brand new. But here's some examples that I found online of what's inspiring me and my inspiration and my intention behind what I'm creating. And as it so happened, it did actually work for their audience as well and their reach, and it worked out quite well, to the point where I actually that was a free job because I was trying out my portfolio. And then they liked it so much, they showed it to their landlord, who was very heavily involved in their shop and how they ran their business. And then he owns about 50 shops down the road, who then invited me to come in and do a promotional segment for his shopping mall that he owns, which was paid, because he liked the aesthetic I created so much from my experiment. And then that paid job, because he knows the guy who runs the business of the coffee shop, he knew what the brief was that I'd given the client. And I was open with him. I said, well, I've just done this job for them. It was an experiment. Let me try it out again and see if it works, because you obviously like this style. Let's try it out again. the other thing that I want to do now, so I think bringing it around to your question, I think be completely open and transparent with your clients. If you want to try out something new or you're still trying to find your aesthetic, be open and say, look, I'm still practicing. I always use the one that I'm a student quite a lot. You know, I say I'm a student, I'm practicing, I want to develop and learn. You know, can I come in and film some stuff? And you know, most often than not, it's yeah, sure, come in. If they don't lose anything, they're mainly gaining. Because if you're creating content for businesses, businesses always need content. They're never gonna be without content.
Question on that.
Yeah.
At what point do you think you need to stop doing free stuff? Because this is a
Yeah.
stickler for me. Because sometimes I'm like, I'm sure you'll have got it. Can you do this video for us? Oh yeah, what's your budget? Nothing, but we have 50 followers on Instagram. It'll get you great exposure.
It's always the exposure.
Sound familiar? Yeah. Let me just pay my rent in exposure.
Yeah. I'd say.
But what point does it do you go like, no, this is more than just something that I do on the weekend. This is my trade.
Proper hustle. Your trade. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's very much down to personal preference. It's very subjective, where and when you feel comfortable doing it. So for me, it was a gut feeling and gut instinct. When I started out, I started doing free jobs for charity work. I got very friendly with the guys at the local council and at the parish council and town council, and they wanted some free promotional stuff and I highlight the word free here, because they knew I was a student, they knew I was a filmmaker, they knew I wanted to learn, so, you know, as they do. But I wasn't willing to charge because I didn't feel that I was professional enough to go, well, this is going to be £100 an hour, for example, or, industry rates. I didn't feel that I knew enough. And at the time I was about 14, 15. So me trying to build my business out of this, everyone was laughing at me and going, well, I'm not gonna pay you to do it. You come in and do it for free for me because age. So I think age was an issue for me when I was
Preach it. Age is still an issue for me. People see the videos that I make and then learn that I'm 22 and go, and then give me the spiel of, we'll post it and we'll tag you.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, definitely not.
With online stuff, I think it started for me when, as a cinematographer, I'm a big kit nerd. So when I had, and this will be quite controversial, but I think it's obviously how you use the tools that you're given. You can make a professional grade film with an iPhone or with an entry level crop frame sensitive camera, for example. But I think for me to be able to get the best high quality production value out of something that's corporate, for example, you need good kit. And I think making something on a phone is all well and good, but unless you're a seasoned professional working with that phone and knowing all the theory behind it and everything like that, if you give the average Joe Blogger a phone and say make a professional video, people are going to go, well, that's nice, and I can use that possibly, but I'm not going to pay £6,000 for it because it's not going to be worth it. You hire a professional film crew in to do something, they're going to make you something that's insanely high production value, and you can charge £6,000 for it, for example. So you charge for how much you think you're worth to the production value that you're worth. Kit isn't the be all and end all, but if you have access to high quality kit that you know how to use, and that's really important, then go for that. Because I'd say with kit, get the stuff you're going to get use out of and will stretch your skills, but that you can outgrow and then upgrade when you outgrow it. So for the past sort of 9-10 years, I've gone through 3 or 4 cameras. My first professional camera that I started on was a 600D. It was a DSLR Canon 600D. My camera before that was a 2002 Handycam, JVC Handycam. And my camera before that was a 90 something point and shoot horrible thing. And that's like one of the first cameras I ever had. Then I went to the 600D, or the JVC Handycam, then the 600D. And then from the 600D, after I grew out of crop frame and was understanding what full frame was and the benefits of full frame and how it could help me in low light shooting and fast prime lenses, I shifted into a 5D Mark II with a 50mm 1.8 and stuck with that for many years until I've literally just upgraded to a 1DX Mark II. which is a you put top of the range DSLR because that suits me and my business as a travel photographer. I've steered way off your question, but over those 10 years I upgraded 3 or 4 times and lenses as well, because I outgrew those tools and my aesthetics and values as a filmmaker and creative were changing, and I needed access to those new tools. For example, stabilization, I started with nothing. Wondered why my videos were so shaky all the time. Looked into things like on the JVC Handycam I had inbuilt image stabilization, and at the time it wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. Then on the 600D I worked out that it didn't have anything and that it was all shaky and that stabilization was a thing. And then I got a glide cam, and then went from a glide cam. Now I own a Ronin S, for example, which is, and that suits my aesthetic and shoots fits what I shoot for.
Yeah. That's cool.
I've lost the plot.
I don't know what my question was. I have no idea what my question was. It wasn't written down. I haven't got a clue. It was good stuff though. What do you just for the sake of, you said you're a bit of a kit nerd, just for the sake of the people that are also kit nerds, what are you shooting on? What you got? This is totally off topic.
On a 1DX Mark II, with currently a kit of 2 L series Canon lenses, the 24-70mm Mark III f2.8 fixed, and the 16-24mm f2.8 fixed Mark II. Rode VideoMic Pro currently on at the moment. Got NTG2 with 2-meter boom pole and blimp, the originals, for anything that's scripted or anything dialogue based. And obviously the old 5D is a spare camera. 250mm, a 51.8 STM Mark II, and the 50mm L, I believe, Mark II at 1.4.
Dang. How come? So I remember when you were debating what camera to get, and you were asking about, because I use Sony A7S Mark IIs.
Yeah.
And you were debating on whether to go, was it A7 III or 5D Mark II? What was it that swung it?
Well, it wasn't the 5D, it was the 1DX or the Sony. What swung it was, what I was debating was weight and size. As a travel filmmaker and travel photographer, weight and size is key, especially if you're jumping on planes and stuff quite a lot. I like to, when I do sort of plane travel, I like to just sort of swing a bag over my back and just jump on a plane rather than pay for luggage, because it's cheaper, especially if you're going away just for the weekend or something. So the 1DX Mark II, or the 1DX range anyway in general, is insanely heavy. They're well renowned to be heavy, big, bulky cameras that are tanks. The Sony ranges are lovely because they're tiny and light. What swung it for me personally was the Sonys. I demoed a Sony at Jessop's, and everything was in menu. Every menu system you can imagine, every button that's on the Canons is in some form of digital menu, pretty much on the Sonys. And I like to be able to have buttons you can flick and press and fiddle with all the time and just sort of click stuff here, there and everywhere. A bit like a games console controller, really, rather than having to keep going in menus all the time, because I get lost in menus and can't read them properly. I guess it's just how I work. So yeah, I think the main thing that swung it was the menu systems. And the screens are similar sizes. I mean, both cameras are pretty much same spec, I reckon.
Yeah, if not very close.
It's very, very close. And what swung it for me was, it was between weight and menu systems. And I went for the extra weight with buttons that I could press rather than less weight and more fiddly menu systems. Because when I'm on a shoot, for example, I mean, you see me do portrait shoots, I work very fast. I have ADD and things like that. So it means that my creative brain works faster than me actually operating. So I have an idea and go to shoot, and my hands or my physicalities won't be at the speed my brain is. So if I was to use an in-menu camera, it would just mean I get really frustrated because I'd be wanting to capture that idea at the moment, in that moment in time. Excuse me, and can't, because I'm currently fiddling around with all the settings in menu, and my brain just wouldn't be able to sort of work at the same pace. Which is why I reckon I went for Canon over anything else.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's just, I just thought I'd throw a bit in there because people will be thinking, oh, what does he shoot on?
Yeah.
So why not? Filmmaking, back to it again. You're quite social media savvy. You would classify yourself as a content creator? Mainly on Instagram?
Yeah, my main portfolio is on Instagram, and I believe that Instagram is the main newest up-and-coming website or platform to be posting your portfolio. The world's getting very social now. The world's getting very online social. I feel like things like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still great, and it's still great for...
I love LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of LinkedIn. I can never get used to it, and I feel like for creatives and small creators, I find LinkedIn too scary and too dominating, and too sort of big and sort of we're corporate people and we can hire you sort of thing.
That's why you should be on it.
Yeah, but then I find Instagram a lot more chill for things like that. It doesn't go. It still goes. I'm professional. Hire me, in a sense, if you're marketed that way. But it's a lot more chill, a lot more community based. I think that's predominantly one of the main reasons why I'm on it, because of the community and the communities you can build online and through online, and utilize those tools online.
I talk about how important it is to find your niche kind of online, your audience, and then also how do you do that? Because obviously it's quite easy to just post whatever, and then maybe like someone will like it and whatever. But
I think
how important is it to cultivate, like, this is kind of what I do, and also find an audience for that?
So I'm going to put a disclaimer on this, that the journey that I'm going to tell you about, and the journeys that people tell you about that to grow their Instagram account, is the way they've done it, and it's not necessarily going to work for you. There's no set way to grow an Instagram account. It's very personal to the journey that the person has gone on, and that the account has gone on to get where they are. And there's so many. The reason why there's no set way is because there's so many different factors which are thrown into the mix to make that happen. There are obviously some set ways and some set theory-based ways you can work off for it to work, or for it to boost you in a little bit. But I mean, how I'm nearly hitting 1,000 followers, and that's not a lot. But that's taken me 2 years to build that, pretty much. I was stuck on 755 for about 4 months and was wondering why. And it is very key to the Instagram algorithm. So there are lots of books. I recommend Sarah Tasker's book, #Authentic. Is one of the ways that I learned all about the Instagram algorithm. Her story is phenomenal and fantastic. And she's a very inspiring content creator, and started from nothing and built her way up, like most of the content creators. The Instagram algorithm works by one thing are the hashtags you use. So if you're constantly copying and pasting the hashtags that you use, you're going to get shadow banned, which means that the algorithm is going to sort of identify that you're almost spamming that hashtag section, and will block your post from coming up from sort of even the top or at all. So on those, there's no point in even hashtagging those, because they're not going to appear in those hashtags, pretty much. So if you're using, say, for example, me, if I use #whimsical is what I use quite a lot. If I use that on about 4 or 5 posts consecutively, I'll get shadow banned from that hashtag, pretty much. The other way is with hashtags, they're really powerful, is if you're a very small account, like for example me, I've only got around sort of 950 followers at the moment, is to use hashtags which will get you noticed, but also are applicable to your account following size. So if you use, for example, hashtag Instagram Daily, or Insta Daily, I think is one that people use quite a lot, or a Throwback Thursday or something like that, that has got so many millions of photographs in them that it works via, when you put a post up, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, the engagement of that post is how high it will send you on the rankings in the hashtags. So if you've got an Instagram Daily hashtag with a following of, say, 60k, and all those 60k people like it within the first 10 minutes, in the Instagram Daily hashtag, your post will go right to the top of the trending, pretty much. So you need to use one that are in variable size to your account. So use big ones, because then you have some chance, people will see your shot. If it's a scroll stopper, which I like to say, which is where your shot is, you're scrolling through your feed and your shot is so good that people actually scroll back through and go, oh, that's amazing, and like it, and maybe go through onto your account. I like to promote my scroll stoppers quite a lot, or the ones that get a lot of engagement To start with, say if I post something and within the first 3 days it gets about 100, 120 likes, I'll then possibly promote that if I'm happy to promote that and if that promotes my brand the best with the right values in it. Which then will give me more engagement, and it's about converting those likes. It's all well and good having those likes and them liking it, but you need to convert them into followers by having them click through into your account and then follow you, having a quick scroll through your feed and then following you through there. Which is to get your engagement up. So those two are the hashtag ones. So use smaller ones. So I use things like, I like to create my own sometimes as well. It's quite nice to do things like that, which leads me into community. Instagram, a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of creators will say, I haven't got a lot of engagement. I haven't got a lot of, people interacting with my stuff. The moment I started liking and commenting on people's stuff, I scroll through my feed, and if I like it, I'll now make an effort to comment on people's things that I really like with a really genuine comment. You don't want anything too, basic, like, oh, this is great, or just a thumbs up or something. You want to make it really personal because you want to strike up a dialogue with that person, because your brand, your handle is going to be posted on that comment. And it's basically pretty much a billboard which will be posted up saying, here's my account, come and follow me. If you post something like, this just made my day, or if you take time to read the caption, a lot of people do a lot of long captions. So if you take the time to read that, if you're interested in the account or the content that's been posted, read the caption, because it might inspire you. And if it does inspire you, leave a really supportive message, and then that's more likely to get you conversions over into yours, because people go, oh, this guy's nice, he knows, knows some stuff, and I'll go check out what his stuff is. And that's what I normally do, getting out there in the community and commenting on people's stuff. When I have somebody come and comment on my thing that I've not seen before, or that I know isn't following me, I'll read through their message, and if it's, a genuine one, I'll reply to it with a genuine reply back, because I like to be interactive with my audience. My inbox is always open. People message me, I'll reply back quite quickly, and I'll reply back to the comments and things like that. And sometimes that will lead me through, if I like what they've said, it will lead me through into their account. I'll have a quick check out their account, and if it fits with my aesthetic, then I'll give them a follow back. Because it's all about, community based, which is the other important thing. What you like and what you follow on Instagram is applicable to the algorithm. So say if you're, for example, with filmmakers and photographers. So on Instagram, it's pretty much photography based. There is a film side coming into it, which is it's really good. I'm really impressed with Instagram TV.
It's not bad. It gets a lot of flack, but I don't mind it.
Yeah, I agree. I like to use it through Instagram rather than through the actual app itself, but it works quite well. But for example, us as photographers, I follow a lot of photography which is in my strain of photography. So I follow a lot of travel photography, a lot of lifestyle photography, a lot of vintage type stuff, a lot of portraiture, a lot of portraiture and self-portraits. Yeah. Everything that's in my vote. If I suddenly go and follow a meme account, for example, or I go and follow, taking the food example, if I go and follow a food account, which is totally irrelevant to my account, then it will throw the algorithm off, because it pulls it up in the suggestives. So when you follow somebody, it will say suggested accounts, which would be some that the algorithm has identified which you interact with these accounts, and here is some accounts that are similar to this one. If you're interacting with things like meme accounts, it will get really confused and have a complete jumbled idea of what things you like. It's like how Pinterest works. So if you search something on Pinterest, what will come up in your feed the next time you go on Pinterest is similar things to what you searched previously. It's the same sort of algorithm. And that's how you'll become discoverable. Because people are then, following somebody who's a similar vibe to you. And if you've connected with that account previously, you'll come up on their suggested follows. And then they can click through and follow you and then see your work. And then it's all one big rolling mass of community.
That's cool. Do you get a lot of clients from Instagram?
Yeah.
Is that where most of your clients come from?
Yeah, so when I'm out and about in the real world, I hand out my cards. I always have some cards with me. And I'm always redesigning them and rebranding them as well. And predominantly I've been testing out just putting, because a lot of people are confused about what to put on their business cards. I find it really annoying And especially for me and my business, if you spam your entire card or fill your entire card with where to find me, and you put your telephone number, your email address, your website, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your Twitter page, for example, if you put all these social media links in there, I get really overwhelmed and I don't know which one to go for first. And they're just like, well, they're just sort of reaching out and going, well, here's my contact. You can reach me on all these platforms. I like to put 2, if not 1. I've been testing out putting 1, and I'll put just my Instagram because that's where my portfolio is and what I'm most proud of and where I'm most active on as well. So that will follow them through into my Instagram. This is called business funneling. So with business funneling, it will funnel them through different platforms or through different spaces to get to the ultimate one, which is you're building an audience and earning money. As a business, as we're both small businesses and small content creators, we obviously have to pay bills. So this is literally what I was talking to you about before we started rolling. If, for example, a client, I can hand a card to a friend or a client or, somebody who is interested in my work, and their friend says, oh, I need, a promotional video done or a set of portraits done or something. And, their friend will go, oh, I've just met somebody who can do that. He seemed quite nice. Here's his card. They hand the card over. They go on your Instagram. And then I like the Instagram inbox. I reply really quickly on there. It's really well laid out. And you can add different inboxes now as well. So I use Instagram inbox as instant messaging more predominantly than anything else. More predominantly than even emailing, because I like to keep my clients on a very close personal basis. I don't like to have that sort of, with emails, it's very, you have that sort of professional facade and it's all very, distant. With Instagram, because you have a portfolio and profile attached to it as well, it makes it much more intimate, which is how I run my business, which is on an intimate level with the client. I like to get to know them. I like to get to know what their aesthetic is and what they expect of me, what their personal values are as well. Gone slightly off topic, but to answer your question directly, I do get a lot of business through Instagram. I get a lot of connection through Instagram and a lot of collabs through Instagram as well, which leads on to paid work.
So for someone who's just heard all that, or someone who's maybe listening to this because they're trying to get started, what would your tip be for someone who's just starting out?
Create and create again. Never stop creating is one of the main things that I'm going to completely reiterate. Keep working, keep learning, keep creating, because even if you get to the top and, for example, as a cinematographer, you become the best cinematographer in industry, you're still going to be learning. You're still going to know the ropes, but you're still going to come across things you've never come across before. You're still going to have different situations. The thing about filmmaking and the love of it is that it's always changing. It's always different. Every shoot is different. Every person is different. Every client is different. Every situation is different. Every lighting situation, everything is always different. And that's what I love about filmmaking in general, is that there's no next job, or there's no next day which is the same. It's always completely different, and you've got to be prepared for that as a filmmaker. I think you've got to be prepared for things like the simplest things, like, for example, we've both got mirrors set up on our desk to see whether our cameras are recording. Workarounds like that. As you mentioned it, I'd also done it 10 minutes previously, which is the funny thing, because we've obviously had both experience of cameras cutting out and things not recording properly, or even forgetting,
just being out the shot, just out like here.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like
just being out the shot, which is another thing I should check actually as well, which I am in shot good. I did check about 4 times, but you can never be sure.
Never be sure.
But somebody who's just starting, it depends on the industry, but if you want to start, for example, on Instagram, start creating, start looking at what's out there, start connecting with people. One of the biggest things actually I found is working on, I forgot to say about sort of connecting with audiences as well, and connecting with people and growing your audience. Getting out there and commenting and liking on people's stuff, yes, all well and good. Reaching out to people, brilliant. But the best thing is collaborations. So especially as we're stuck in it with COVID, I've started basically it's an Instagram studio. I don't know what I'm telling you because you're already in it. An Instagram group chat where people of small makers and small businesses can come along and chat to us and sort of be involved in this community. It's called the Nomadic Makers Collective. And we support each other during COVID, and we talk about creative things, and we show each other work we're doing and ask questions, and it's just a community of creative people to get people inspired again. And I think that's a really nice thing. I've seen a lot of communities-based stuff like that pop up, especially over COVID, but just generally as well. There are people run giveaways, people run messaging sort of competitions where, you know, I sent one round the other day where it's here are five small creators to enter this, follow all creators, then knock off number 5 and add you at number 1 and shift everybody down and send that to 15 people on your friends list, because 15 people will send that to another 15 people on their friends list, and you can get, you know, more outreach like that. Or not even, if people don't want to join in, that's fair enough, but at least it puts your name out there on a billboard through Instagram, through the Instagram community. People can at least check you out, and you know, your reach and engagement will go up, which means that because your statistics and figures are increasing, the algorithm will see you're an up and coming account and will start putting more people your way, for example. It's all about being active and being engaged and things like that. Giveaways are another wonderful thing. Actual work collaborations, as creatives, we're never stopping creating stuff. If you're a photographer or a filmmaker listening to this, you know, you might be interested in and never thought of doing it. Things like, you know, sewing or knitting or illustration or graphic design or typography. And there might be a typographer or an illustrator or a graphic designer that's, you know, running something, or you even want to collab with and just message them and say, can we make something together? And then you can both put it out on your Instagram once you've made it. You can put it on your Instagrams and tag each other in it, and then, you know, all their following will see your work and all your following will see their work, for example. So
just get started, just post stuff, just make stuff.
Yeah, just making stuff. And you'll learn as you go through, and you'll fall into the pitfalls as you go through, and eventually you'll start, you know, getting engagement and loving what you do. One of the things I would say is a cohesive grid, or a grid that's different. Instagram is so saturated, and I think this is why things like what you're doing and what I do exist. You know, to tell people how, or to give people knowledge of how to sort of grow and build and become successful. Because the market is so saturated, and I've never stopped hearing this. And even when, actually, the question you asked me is how you get started is the question I was asking when I was trying to get started. And I'd see filmmakers like where we're sat today, you know, with a small following and earning a bit of money off what they do. And I go, well, how did you start that? How did you do that? And they just said, well, I just worked, you know. And they say, well, what are you doing at the moment? And I'll tell them, I'm working on X project and that project, and, you know, I'm doing all this stuff. And they're just like, brilliant, keep doing that. And I used to get really frustrated because people were like, you're on the right lines, just keep going with it. There's no other thing you can do. And I was like, well, there must be some kind of key. There must be some kind of, you know, magic answer for this to work. And there isn't. It's literally just keep working and keep making and keep developing yourself as a creative and finding your vibe and where you fit, and your community. But yeah, a cohesive grid system, once you found your aesthetic and once you played about, by all means play about. For example, you might have a professional account where you post your most amazing work, which is your portfolio, and then you have a more chilled out, relaxed art account where you just post stuff you create even though it's rubbish, or even though you think it's rubbish, because we all think our work's rubbish at the end of the day. You know, put stuff where you put stuff that you think is, you know, isn't great or isn't your best, but you're still working on it to get people's opinions and, you know, just to get your work out there. And you can test out different stuff and, you know, different audience responses and things. And then making cohesive grid, I keep saying this and I haven't actually got to the point of it. A cohesive grid is a grid with a cohesive colour palette, a cohesive aesthetic, a cohesive brand values or values with it, which people like to see, something that works as one. You look at someone's grid and you go, wow, that's what's going to stand out to them. If you look at someone's grid that is filled with completely all orange tones or completely filled with yellow tones, that for me shocks me and goes, wow, that's cool. You know, what other things are they doing? And you look at each image, it's a bit like pixels in a way, how sort of different colours make up an image of pixels. And that sort of works for me, you know. Different colour, it works with sort of colour theory. And I think people that got cohesive grid, my grid for example, works with seasons, because I shoot naturally out in nature quite a lot of the time. That's what my brand values are, and that's what I'm branded around, is nature and natural, and you know, working with your sort of emotions and fluidity of human life to work naturally with the seasons and with the natural world around us. So my grid as I shoot with natural light and I shoot a lot of candids and portraits and things like that and self-portraits in nature, my grid is always very toned with lots of nature. So, for example, in spring, it's very very under-saturated, vibrant greens. Autumn, my favourite season, is always very orangey, lots of burnt oranges and browns. Winter is very blue and white. And I shift the colour palette through the photos that I put up, or through the work that I put up, into the grid. So as we shift from, for example, autumn into winter, when we're in mid-autumn, the colours will be a lot of oranges, very, very strong oranges. As we get into winter, there'll be some oranges and some blue. And then as we're in winter, it will be all blue. So those tones will shift across the palettes quite a lot. So it's got to have a lot of intention with it.
Intention. I like that. Intention and just start.
Yeah. That's, boiling it down, that's where it is. Intention behind your work and starting. And community. And story.
And story. Alex, you're a legend. Thanks so much for spending this time with us.
No worries, mate.
Really appreciate it. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at alexandernomad.co. You can find me at my website, which is my blog, health and lifestyle blog, at www.alexandernomad.co, which is the same as my Instagram handle with the www in front of it. And on Spotify at my podcast, which is the Live Simply podcast. Sorry.
Brilliant. You're a hero. Thanks so much, mate.
No worries, mate. See you soon.
Cheers. See you soon. Bye.
Well, that was fun. That was really weird.